the northern beaches of Sydney, a postcard dream. Golden sands kissed by turquoise waves. The sun blazed down, a benevolent overlord. Tourists and locals alike basked in the glory of it all. But beneath the surface of this paradise, a darker current stirred, a current that only the beach cops could navigate. Senior Sergeant Sarah Jones, a seasoned veteran of the Northern Beaches Force, squinted at the midday sun. Her office was the sand, her desk a rugged patrol vehicle. Sarah knew every riptide, every hidden cove, every shadowed corner of this paradise. She also knew that danger lurked beneath the beauty, waiting for the moment to strike. The northern beaches weren't immune to the ills that plagued the world. Drugs found their way onto the pristine shores. Petty thefts escalated into violent confrontations. Domestic disputes turned ugly under the harsh glare of the sun. Sarah had seen it all, and it was her duty, along with her team of dedicated officers, to hold the line between paradise and chaos. Today, the surf was up, and the beach throbbed with life. Families picnicked on colorful blankets. Teenagers chased waves on brightly colored surfboards. It was a scene of pure joy, of carefree abandon. But Sarah couldn't afford to be swept away by the illusion. She knew that behind the smiles and laughter, trouble often lurked, and she would be ready. The first call crackled through the police radio, a jarring interruption to the idyllic sounds of the beach. A group of youths, drunk and disorderly, were causing a disturbance near the lifeguard tower. Sarah and her partner, Constable Ben Lee, a fresh-faced recruit still wet behind the ears, responded immediately. As they approached the scene, the air grew thick with tension. The youths, fueled by alcohol and bravado, were shouting obscenities and shoving each other. A small crowd had gathered, a mix of curiosity and fear etched on their faces. Sarah, a commanding presence despite her small stature, stepped out of the vehicle. Her voice, though calm, brooked no argument. "All right, that's enough. Break it up," she commanded, her hand resting on her holster. The youths, momentarily taken aback by her sudden appearance, hesitated. But the ringleader, a lanky teenager with bloodshot eyes and a sneer plastered across his face, stepped forward. He reeked of alcohol and something else, something Sarah couldn't quite place. "What are you gonna do about it, lady?" he slurred, taking a menacing step towards her. Ben tensed beside her, his hand hovering near his own holster. Sarah held her ground, her gaze unwavering. She had dealt with his kind before. "I suggest you back down, son," Sarah said, her voice low but firm. "This is your only warning." The teenager laughed, a harsh, grating sound. He shoved Ben hard, sending the younger officer stumbling backward. In a flash, Sarah had the teenager pinned against the patrol car, her handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists. The rest of the group, emboldened by their leader's defiance, started to close in, but the sound of approaching sirens cut through the air. Backup had arrived. The remaining youths, their bravado evaporating, scattered like frightened seagulls. The ringleader, his face now contorted in a mask of anger and fear, spat at Sarah's feet. "You'll regret this, bitch!" he snarled. Sarah ignored him, her expression unreadable. She had heard it all before. The boy was all talk, a paper tiger. But beneath his bravado, she saw a flicker of something else. Despair, hopelessness. It was a look she recognized all too well. As they bundled the teenager into the back of the patrol car, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. The incident, though seemingly minor, was a symptom of a larger problem, a festering wound beneath the surface of paradise. The day wore on, a relentless cycle of calls and responses. A lost child reunited with frantic parents. A domestic dispute mediated before it could escalate into violence. A group of tourists warned about the dangers of swimming at an unpatrolled beach. Each call, though seemingly mundane, had the potential to turn dangerous in an instant. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the sand, Sarah and Ben responded to a report of a possible drug deal going down near a secluded beach access point. The tip had come from a local resident, an elderly woman who had grown increasingly concerned about the suspicious activity she had witnessed. They arrived at the location, a narrow, winding road that snaked its way through dense bushland to a secluded stretch of beach. The air hung heavy with the smell of salt and eucalyptus, the silence broken only by the crashing waves and the distant cries of seabirds. Sarah could feel her senses sharpening, her pulse quickening. Something wasn't right. They approached the beach cautiously, their hands hovering near their holsters. The setting sun cast an eerie glow on the scene before them. Two men, their faces obscured by hoodies, stood facing each other. A duffel bag lay open at their feet, its contents hidden from view. Sarah and Ben exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the danger they were in. They had stumbled upon something bigger than a simple drug deal. This was organized. This was serious. The element of surprise was on their side, but for how long? "Police!" Sarah shouted, her voice echoing through the stillness. "Hands where I can see them!" The men whirled around, their hands darting to their waistbands. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. One of the men, his face contorted in a mask of rage, pulled out a gun. A wave of fear washed over Sarah, but she pushed it down, her training taking over. "Drop the weapon!" she yelled, her voice trembling slightly. Time seemed to slow down. The crashing waves, the distant cries of the seabirds all faded into the background. The only sound was the pounding of Sarah's heart and the rasp of her own breath. The gunman hesitated, his eyes darting between Sarah and Ben, his finger twitching on the trigger. In that split second, a million thoughts raced through Sarah's mind. Her family, her friends, her life. And then, a strange calmness washed over her. She knew what she had to do. Without a word, Sarah stepped forward, placing herself directly in the gunman's line of fire. "Shoot me," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, "but let him go." The gunman stared at her, his expression unreadable. He had not expected this. Ben, his face pale with fear, lunged for his own weapon. "Sarah, no!" he shouted, his voice hoarse with panic. But Sarah held her ground, her gaze locked on the gunman's. The standoff seemed to stretch on for an eternity. The only sound was the crashing of the waves and the ragged breathing of the three figures on the beach. The gunman, his face now etched with uncertainty, lowered his weapon slightly. "Get out of here," he muttered, his voice barely audible above the sound of the surf. "Both of you." Sarah didn't move. "Not without the bag," she said, her voice firm. "You walk away, and we'll forget we ever saw you." The gunman hesitated for a moment, then tossed the duffel bag at Sarah's feet. He turned and melted into the shadows, his footsteps silent on the sand. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the tension broke, and Sarah felt her legs turn to jelly beneath her. Ben rushed to her side, his eyes wide with relief. "Are you crazy?" he hissed, his voice shaking. "You could have been killed." Sarah managed a weak smile. "But I wasn't," she said. "Let's get out of here." Back at the station, the adrenaline slowly subsided, leaving Sarah feeling drained and emotionally spent. The encounter on the beach, though successful, had shaken her to her core. It had been a stark reminder of the ever-present danger of her job, of the thin blue line that separated order from chaos. As she filled out the seemingly endless paperwork, the weight of her responsibility pressed down on her. It was more than just catching criminals and enforcing the law. It was about protecting the innocent, about being a symbol of hope in a world that often felt dark and unpredictable. It was about making a difference, one call, one encounter, one life at a time. And as she looked out over the city, the lights twinkling like a million fallen stars, she knew that her work, though often unseen and unappreciated, mattered. The northern beaches of Sydney, a paradise, yes, but also a microcosm of the world, with its own unique set of challenges and rewards. And for the men and women of the beach cops, every day was a testament to their courage, their dedication, and their unwavering commitment to keeping their community safe. They were the guardians of the surf, the protectors of paradise. And though their work often went unnoticed, their presence was felt by all who lived, worked, and played on those golden shores. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple. Another day was coming to an end, the waves whispering secrets to the shore. On the beach, a lone figure stood silhouetted against the dying light. Senior Sergeant Sarah Jones, her face etched with the day's events, took a deep breath of the salty air. The beach was quiet now, the crowds long gone, but tomorrow the sun would rise again, and the cycle would begin anew. And Sarah, along with her team of dedicated officers, would be there, ready to face whatever challenges came their way. They were the beach cops, and this was their watch.